Let's Cracking team. Today we're going to talk about learning. Now, we thought this would be a fun place to start. One, because I got to deliver a workshop on learning in 2 weeks. But on top of that, in the last few months, Holly has completed a physiotherapy degree, gone to Thailand on a prac, done her final prac, done Night of Champions, been on one mentorship, started another mentorship. There's a lot of learning going on. So between the two of us, it's very topical, and we're looking forward to sharing it with you guys today. Let's get started, Holly. Of all of the stuff you've been doing to learn, what is the most memorable in recent 6 to 12 months?
What specific things have I learnt that have been most memorable?
Yeah, or the experience tied to it. I think one thing that a lot of people don't get about learning is that learning is a mixture of student, teacher, experience, context. Yeah. There's quite a lot of things that go into it. It's not as simple as here is a lesson I learned. It's embedded in something you do.
I think to start off with, you have to be open to knowing that you don't know everything, and there's people out there that either don't know more than you, but there's people out there that you can learn off, and there's many different people, and you've got to be open to the fact of learning different things from different people and taking what you want from them.
Would you call yourself a know-it-all in general?
No, definitely not.
I definitely am.
What, you're a know-it-all?
Yeah, 100%. Insufferable know-it-all.
What, you think you're a know-it-all?
I feel like I definitely have moments where I want to say I know more. Yeah, 100%. That's okay, continue. You're talking about different people, knowing different things, knowing more, knowing less.
Yeah, so I think for me it was, before all of this, it was wow, I really don't know it all and I want to know more. So it's okay, what do I want to know? Who do I want to learn off? And making it happen. You've got to kind of go in there with a very open mind, I think, and be very open to failing and not knowing it and not getting it right to then be able to get it right in the future.
I like it. Now let's talk about this fear of failing, or this uncomfortability with failing. You've recently, I'm not going to say left powerlifting, but it's definitely changed shape for you quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember you a few weeks back when you decided to make that change, saying that you were terrified of doing it. And this is something that you've been back and forthing within yourself for, I would say, some time as well. What was that like? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it was really, really hard. I think when you tie your whole identity to one thing, and that one thing for me was being a strong powerlifter, it's really hard coming away from that, because when you do, you kind of go, well, who am I and what do I have if I don't have this? So I think it's just a big identity shift, but it kind of needed to happen to prove to myself that I'm more than how strong I am. Learning new things is so fun, and I think I was so stagnant in doing the same thing over and over again, which I think a lot of people need, but I had been doing it for a very long time, and I think I needed some sort of switch up and some learning of just doing something else. I think because also my life is changed, I'm in a very transitional phase of my life, finish my studies, taking coaching more seriously, being in a gym where people want variety, and I think as a coach, you need to go through that variety yourself and learn different things to be able to teach it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think I went through a very similar phase to what you're going through now about 5 years ago. At the time, I used to do parkour, gymnastics, strength, handstands, mobility, some strength, some rock climbing. I did a lot of different things at the same time, and I got very lucky and was offered a job as the head strength coach at a gym. And at the time, I could hardly deadlift 200 kilos, and we won't even talk about my squat on my bench. But when I got given that opportunity, one, I was super grateful for it, but two, I kind of looked at myself and I said, am I someone I would want to learn from? And I found answering that question quite confronting, to be honest. I think imposter syndrome is something I've always struggled with, and that's completely fine. That's a me thing. But just looking at myself objectively, what had I learned? Where had I been? What things had I done to make myself a good strength coach? I felt like answering that question was quite limited. So I actually decided to deliberately ignore everything except the things that I coached, which were powerlifting and weightlifting. And I've done pretty much just those two things, give or take, for, about 5 years now. And it's quite funny. I still wouldn't say that, like, I always look at myself and I think, fuck yeah, I'd be the first person I'd hire. But I do feel really solid with the results that we get at Small Goods. And I feel like people really enjoy and can sink their teeth into what we do here long term. And I think it's really cool being able to like narrow the vision and say, cool, there's a certain set of things that I really want to dig my teeth into and I want to feel like I really understand. And I think that there are so few people that get to the nitty gritty point and say, going to put a few years into this, but I think that there's like an active balance between doing the same thing in one direction, with a single minded focus, and then there's having variety and understanding that the balance of those two things somewhere in between is probably going to be the place where most people are happy, healthy, strong, enjoying.
100%. I agree. You definitely need to have that balance. And I think also realizing that the sacrifice that it takes to go down one path very far, you need to give up a lot of other aspects of your life to be really great at one thing.
Yeah, and I think it's super interesting because it's like I just don't think that there are that many people that will have the genuine opportunity to just do that one thing. Like, even if they really want it, and even if that's something that they are single minded in, you're still going to make a living. You still might have a family. You might have a business. You might have a mortgage. You might have friends and family that need you. So I think one thing that I kind of realized in the very short stint that I was serious about competing is that you do give up a lot in a lot of different directions. And I think that that suits some people better than others. But I got to a point where I was actually very satisfied with, how I performed and what I did and my understanding and knowledge of all of these things. And I realized that it was actually way more gratifying to, share in the learning rather than simply just continue to push further and further.
Yeah, I definitely think I found from my training and like the powerlifting, I thought it was the competing that I really enjoyed. And like I do enjoy it, but I think it was more lifting with like minded people that brings me so much joy. And if I get to lift with other really cool people who do crazy shit, I think I could never compete again. I'd be quite happy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that there's like this process of clarification that we all have to go through, and everyone's going to become clear on something if they take the time to actually reflect and think about what it is they need. When I started competing, for me, it was about significance. I really believe that quite strongly. I felt like I'd been overlooked in a couple of different areas of my life, like I wasn't maybe as appreciated as I would have liked to have been. And I found my need for significance in beating other people. And that was really cool. But I don't feel a need for significance anymore. I have a lot of people who are very grateful for what I do every day. And having smiling, happy, friendly faces to, work with and train, that gives me more than enough significance. So I've actually found it quite hard in some ways to want to push and want to progress the way I used to. I actually went and saw a sports psychologist back when I was competing at nationals to try and improve on this. But, in the sessions that we did together, not a lot wanted to change and not a lot wanted to budge. But I think that's because my needs were met. I was actually trying to force myself to find an unmet need and then meet it. But I'd already done what I needed to. I think one thing that I found really interesting on the back of that, though, is that now that significance is not something I struggle for or I need anymore, the question is, well, like, what's the journey for me and how do I get clear again? Because that was once upon a time what I needed, but the lessons changed. The lesson now is like, how do I get to, share with other people? How do I get to help them on their journey? And what does that look like? Trying to get clear on answering that question is like kind of the A1 responsibility for me these days. But it's funny how if you don't ask that question and ask it honestly and regularly, you end up kind of in the wrong direction and maybe not learning the things you want to do and not developing in the ways you want to.
I really resonate with that as well. I think I was competing for the wrong reasons.
I don't know if it's wrong reasons. I just think it was a reason and it's not a reason
Yeah,
anymore.
I guess you had a need and you had to meet it one way or another, and then you kind of realized that, I don't know, I found I became more secure in myself and who I was, and I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. So you're a month into, not necessarily strictly powerlifting the same way you used to. What have you learnt in that month?
I had so many waves of emotions during training. I'm still going through like all the changes and what it means to me, because my lifting was so like this before, and now it's still structured, but it's way looser than what it was. It's definitely hard. I'm still trying to find my feet of what I'm doing and what I want to achieve with it, but I'm just trying to have fun with it. What have I learned?
And it doesn't necessarily need to be like,
New things fuck up your body. Like honestly, because I think with powerlifting, I was doing it for so long, you build up like a tolerance, whatever. You can't just jump into the deep end, which is what I do all the time. I want to just do everything, and it's like, I think this week I've kind of learned like, wow, I probably should have taken it slower.
That's fair. I think like one thing I
Yeah.
love to come back to, and I say this a lot with clients, is like if you consider training like medicine and different exercises, different medicines and different dosages,
Yeah.
if you're hitting really high intensities and really high volumes in a drug you've never taken before, overdosing so easy.
Yeah.
Where if you've been taking something that you can kind of acclimatize to, then you need a higher and a higher dosage over time to be able to achieve an effect, right?
Yeah.
So it is definitely interesting. And I think when you do more varied training, the irony is that because there's a fair bit of stuff that you may not be doing tons of, like the novelty definitely means that the dosages can be super small and still super
Yeah.
productive.
Yeah. Definitely learnt that. I think I'm quite happy having this switch up because I feel like I could have been stuck doing powerlifting for a long time if I didn't do anything. Do anything else. So it's been really fun, and I think at the start it was really hard being new at something because I don't like being new at things because I want to be the best at things. But I think it's been really good for me to start at square one and just go, okay, you're new, like learn. And it's been really cool. Obviously, we have all our clients, and I forgot the feeling of being new in the gym and doing things that are new. So it's given me a different outlook kind of to feel what the people at the gym feel and all my clients that just come in feel. And it's like, wow, it's so different not knowing what you're doing. Because for so long I would come into the gym and I knew what I was doing, like everything was just, I didn't have to think about it. And coming in, I have to think about so much. I'm like, wow, it can be quite overwhelming. So I definitely think it's, yeah, helped just give perspective on how other people feel.
Yeah, it's a
Which is
big one.
cool.
I think it's like at the end of the day, we're always dealing with humans.
Mm.
And going back to what I was saying before, I think human needs are such an interesting thing. It's like you're talking about this balance between structure and novelty. That like if I do the same thing all the time, it gets a bit boring and it gets a bit monotonous. And maybe I need to train quite a lot in a particular way to see more of something happen. But then on the other side, if I train, in a novel way all the time, how do I know I'm progressing? How do I know that there's something being achieved? It's a very, very difficult thing. And it's so funny because when you break things up into those human needs and what you're actually aiming to achieve and you get clear on that, you go, well, damn, humans need a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's constantly changing too. So I think it's definitely interesting kind of considering things through that guise or perspective. I think it can be very humbling.
Mm. Definitely.
So tell us a little bit more about your recent holiday. You obviously had a physio prac. You were in another country for a while. What a great learning opportunity.
It was great. It was really, really cool. Yeah, I was in Thailand for 3 weeks following a month in Vietnam. It was very different. I didn't really know what to expect going into it. You're definitely going into another country where they were doing physio, but obviously very differently to how we do it here.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I was going into it as a fourth year student, so we'd learn like all the content we need to learn, but it was just more how do I go into their space without kind of overstepping and learning what I needed to, but also teaching them a few things as well. I think the biggest thing I learned from the whole experience was the importance of communication and just like talking to people. It makes a world of a difference if you just like build connections with people. It goes a long way.
And is there anything that you've kind of brought back from learning about that communication and the value of it? Is there anything you brought back to how you treat clients at Small Goods, or is there anything you want, people in general, but also your clients at Small Goods to consider and think off the back of that? Because I think one thing that I think about a lot is like everybody has their own way of processing information, understanding information. And sometimes it can look like to an untrained eye, certain things are or aren't happening. But one thing I've realized, for example, is like some clients really appreciate something written online after training. Some people like a voice note. Some people actually don't want to talk online at all. They literally just want to be told then and there in real time. And that's something that they need. But I find it really interesting that everybody's kind of got their own rhythm, their own method in which they best communicate and like to be communicated with. I wonder if there's anything that you kind of learned that you've brought back.
I definitely learned that like different people need different things in terms of like you'll have some of the kids you need to like pull back more, like you don't need to push them as much, and some kids you need to like push them more. And I guess that is kind of the same with your clients and that sort of thing. Like everyone has different needs, and it's also like with these kids, they had very different backgrounds and that sort of thing. So you really need, like, every person is so different, and you've really got to adjust how you are based on their needs and how they need to be treated.
Were there any like stories that you're like, wow, that was like a big moment where I learned something from this person or from this situation?
The biggest moment I had when I was away was the whole time we were there, like, I didn't really think I was doing much. You're doing physio, but you're only there for a short period of time. So you're just like, oh, how much change can I really make in 3 weeks? And the one kid that I had this disease where eventually his respiratory system would like start failing and the muscles wouldn't work anymore. So it's quite hard. The physios and nurses and everything weren't really aware of the situation. So the whole time I was like, yeah, am I really doing anything to help this kid? So I created like a fact sheet for them. We bought them like the pulse oximeters to measure his oxygen decline. And then I like created a logbook for him and like symptoms to look out for, and like, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. Like very, very dumb. And then on the last day we had to do a handover, and they were kind of explaining how much of a difference this would make to the kid's life, but not just his, just like other people who had respiratory disorders. So I think that was a really big takeaway, because the whole time I was like, oh, I'm not really doing anything. So maybe another thing that I learned was you might not feel like you're making much change, but you really are. And it literally brought me to tears at the end of that, because I was like, wow, like I could have added some years to this kid's life. So yeah, little things add up when they compound, and you actually are doing more than what you think you are sometimes.
Shameless plug, small goods. Nah, that's really touching. I think it's definitely something that can be quite hard when you're in a like people orientated setting and you work with people. It can be hard to tell quite often, like whether people are enjoying, not enjoying, anywhere in between. But it's definitely one of those things where when you take a step back at the end of it all, you look through letters or you look through little notes like those and you think, oh wow, actually, I guess I haven't really stopped to consider that, but there are all of these people that are genuinely grateful. And I think that that's definitely something that's really easy to overlook, because you're constantly trying to help and do what little amount you can. And sometimes it feels like that little amount is literally zero. But yeah, it's quite fun taking that second when you get the opportunity.
100%. And I feel like personal connection should be like A1 before anything else. Like you've got to create a connection with someone to get through to them.
Great. And I love that.
Yeah, if you don't have that, then you can't give what you need to give, because you can't get it through to them.
Let's vibe on this a little bit longer then. How would you go about trying to establish a connection with someone? Like, let's say you've got a new client come in. What are your favorite ways to try to break the ice, get to know them, reach them a little bit, give them an opportunity to reach you? Like, do you have any things that you really like to go back to? Any questions you like asking? Any things you like doing?
I literally just like giving them more time, like just having a conversation, finding out about them. Like, I just treat them as if I had just met a new friend, you know. You just want to get to know them. What do you like? What do you not like? Like, get an idea of who they are and what their values are and what they want to achieve. And I think also giving a lot about yourself as well. Like, it goes both ways. You can't just ask all about them. Most people come in here, so I will spend more time getting to know someone that's new and making sure that they feel safe in this environment. I think that's also a big one, because coming into a new environment is very overwhelming. So just being that person to be like, hey, you're here, good job, let's get you started, you know, creating that safe environment and just having a chat, introducing them to other people so they've got more people to chat to, and then they're just like, oh wow, like I feel like I'm a part of this community.
And it's so funny you say that, because like going back to the teaching standards that we had to learn while I was being a teacher and in the process of doing all that, one of the core standards that you have in Australian teaching is that you need to be someone that creates a safe environment, both in terms of catering to the environment and then acknowledging and connecting to the learner in that environment too. So it's quite funny how you say that. It's, the basics of good teaching, but a lot of people, I think, maybe just don't take that time. And it's funny what people interpret as uncomfortable or unsafe, especially when it comes to gym environments. There are a lot of people that do come to Small Goods after having been at a Snap Fitness or an Anytime or a Revo or whatever. And it's funny how just people having their headphones in and not being able to say hello or ask a question to someone in the local environment can go from maybe uncomfortable all the way to I no longer feel welcome or safe here. It's definitely very interesting when you take a step back and you consider, are we doing what we need to do as teachers in this kind of environment to ensure that people maybe don't just feel safe but actually feel welcome to be themselves? Because I think if a safe environment where a learner can interact and not hurt themselves is the teaching standard, one concept I like to come back to for myself is, well, if that's a teaching standard, what's a teaching exceptional look like? And I think a teaching exceptional is not just making someone feel safe, but actually making sure that they can be themselves and not actually worry about being themselves. And I think at Small Goods, that's definitely one of the things that stands out a little bit. You look at people that are incredibly shy when they come, and you think, I don't know if I'm ever going to get more than a sentence out of this person. And 3 months later, they're cracking jokes and making fun of you, and you think, you bastard, I remember what you used to be like.
Yeah, no, it is pretty cool. And I think you get that a lot here. People come in and they don't really say a word, and I think we make it our mission to crack them.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
So let's jump on to finishing your physio degree. Obviously, as a prac, that was the end of the big picture, but like you've been doing this for like years now.
Yeah.
Like, tell me a little bit about physiotherapy. Tell me what you've learned. Like, what do you find interesting now that you've done the whole shebang and it's finished, quote unquote? What really stands out?
I think like this is a very big summary of physio, but it's like the things that I have learned most is like, you have to build like rapport, personal connection, and it's a skill that can't really be taught, and they try and teach it a little bit, but you've just got to be a personal person, and that way you'll get the most out of people. And I think not just physio, but everything in life, it just has to be a slow progress. You can't just jump from level 1 to 100. And I think that's the biggest thing with physio, because you're always fixing things that, well, not everything, but there's a lot of things that people do, like they go from, say, no running at all to running, a marathon. And it's like everything that you do in life, you have to take small steps to get there. And it's just like compound interest. And with a lot of physio things go wrong because people jump from, level 1 to level 100, and you got to kind of bring it back down. So yeah, everything needs to have a graded kind of approach.
Everything needs to stack a couple small bits, okay? No worries.
Yeah, literally. I've also learnt throughout the degree that you don't know everything, and that's okay. Like, yes, I've been studying for 4 years, and I feel like I still don't know everything, but that's okay. Like, as long as you're willing to learn and know where to find the information and that sort of thing, like, it's okay. Because I think the whole degree, I was like, oh my God, I need to learn everything and I need to be a know-it-all by the time I finish with you. It's like, no, it's okay. Like, you will constantly learn, and yeah, you'll find the info that you need, and it'll be okay. What else have I learnt?
I feel like that's a lot of learning already, to be perfectly honest. It's funny how we kind of full circle to that perceived fear of failure or imposter syndrome, and then realizing that, like, if you don't engage with that, you actually can't go anywhere next. I think you also kind of hit on a point where you need to be interested and engaged in what you want to learn as 100%. Well. Like, as you said, it takes time, and there's a lot that you have to grapple with, and I think if you aren't willing to sink your teeth into it and actually try to find the information you don't have, and you need to know where to do that too. But if you're not willing to go looking, figure out what is good information and not good information, then long term you're just going to struggle.
100%. Yeah, and just treating people like people. It's such a simple thing, but I think so many people go study and then they're just like, their head is just a book, and they get a patient, and they just look at them like a book or just an object. I think that comes with the human connection, but they're a person, treat them like a person.
Yeah, it's so simple but so easy to overlook.
So simple.
That's fair. Well, that's a nice little takeaway. I feel like we've definitely learned a little bit about what the physiotherapist Holly feels and thinks. And then in a completely different sphere, you've just done Night of Champions. Like, jumped on Perth's biggest powerlifting stage, arguably. You came away with the win, which was awesome. You managed to hit a big milestone goal. What'd you learn?
It was big learning experience, the whole Night of Champions, the night and the prep leading up to it. I think the biggest thing I learned was, like, it's not that deep, just like have fun. I think I had so many expectations going to every other comp that I used to do. I was just like, no, you have to do this, and like you have to hit this, and if you don't, you suck. Like that's how my brain would go. And I went into this comp and like I had a goal of the 400 kilo total. And in my mind, I was like, look, it'd be really, really cool if I hit it. But if I don't hit it, it's not the end of the world.
So how do you get past that change after feeling so intensely for such a long time? What do you think it was that got you to the point where you're able to actually let go and just do what you do?
It's a hard one because I think it's been such a long process to get there. But I think the mental kind of shifts have just, I don't know, maybe it's like controlling what I can control because the whole prep and like even the other preps before, like you can only try so hard and you can't do any more than what you can do. Like you just do the basics and you do them well. And going into every other comp, it was like, could I have done anything else? And it's like, no, I've done all the hard work. So like, what's the point of getting mad when something doesn't happen when you can just like go out and enjoy yourself and whatever happens, happens. I don't know where else the mindset kind of shift came from. I think I just was like, I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. Like I became a lot more secure in who I was. And yeah, I just like was like, just go and have fun.
Yeah, I think going back to like when I was competing a lot, as I said, I had this crazy drive for significance and I
Mm.
needed to be someone or understand something. And I think, in a lot of ways it served me because I was so busy building myself, whatever that means, to a place where I did feel like someone and I did feel like I could contribute or, be of worth. And I do think that it's really funny because when other people kind of tip their hat to you and acknowledge you, I think that there's a process that slowly happens behind the scenes in your own head where, yeah, okay, I've got a whole bunch of people and they enjoy being around. They enjoy the process. They love being at Small Goods. We love training together. They like working with me as a coach. And there's all of these little nods that happen again and again and again. And one day you kind of wake up and it feels like it's all at once. But you
Mm.
realize that there's just enough there behind you that I don't actually need anything more.
Yeah.
And when I don't go looking for more, actually, I think you can clear your head and you can just treat each set on its merits. When it says RPE 7, you actually do RPE 7 and not RPE 9 because you don't need to be that little bit more.
Yeah.
When it says rest, you actually rest rather than thinking, shit, I've got to do this or I've got to do that or I've got to recover in this way. And I think all of those subtle little changes are kind of what, get you to that place, in my opinion. I mean, I was overshooting every single opportunity I could back in the day. Lo and behold, I struggled to recover and I ended up banged up with a lot of injuries. But it's funny now because when coach says do this, it's like, okay, I'll do this and I don't need to do more and I don't need to do less.
Yeah. I think you realize as well when you constantly overshoot, you're like, it's not worth it. And you realize that it's actually pulling back from your progress. So it's like, let's just, yeah, listen to what coach says and see what happens. And lo and behold, I had the best comp ever. But I think also I really had a good like balance in my life. And was training with a lot of like-minded people, and it was fun. Like it was really, really fun. Although the prep was really hard, I was training with such cool people the whole time.
100%. And I think like a good question that I think is worth asking yourself if you're still listening at this point is, how can I make a game out of this? How can I soften it up just a little bit but still really want to go after what I can go after? Like last Friday, Holly and I trained together and Holly was a little bit in her own head and I just strapped the accelerometer to my bar and hers and I gave her a head start. I said, well, if you can pull harder than me, you win. And if I pull harder than you, I win. That's quite funny because both of us were struggling with our Olympic lifting and both of us had a pretty good day of Olympic lifting. It doesn't need to be complicated to the degree that I think so many people make it. The question is, how do I make this a game worth playing and how do I keep playing it?
I agree. You've got to find those things that will keep you going, whatever they are.
I like it. So last one, well, before we wrap up is, we've talked a lot about your experience kind of finishing up physio and on prac and, Night of Champions. Obviously there's like this whole new Holly that's now done with uni and not done with powerlifting but in a different place now. Like what does all that look like? What's happened since? What have you learned, since kind of moving on from those?
What, like going from that phase of my life to this?
Yeah, like you've obviously done the mentorship with Brandon and you're now doing the mentorship with the strength guys. We've already talked a lot about like your training changes and stuff like that, but how does it feel going from, a student to now a coach and, a physio when that diploma arrives any day now. Like, tell me a little bit more about all that.
It's definitely very odd going from having a learning hat on to a teaching hat on. You definitely have the imposter syndrome being like, do I know this? But then you actually, display that you do know things. You're like, I actually do. So it's been very different, like transitioning into that. But it's also pretty cool, like being able to have a fix problem, and then look back on it, and it kind of gives you more confidence. Like, oh wow, like I can actually make a difference and like fix people's problems and help them. So that's been really, really cool. It kind of just makes me want to find more problems to fix.
Yep, that's what people are. Problems. That's exactly how it works at Small Goods.
But it has been really cool, and I feel like I've been learning so much, and it's really cool to be in an environment where I can help people. So I guess that's why I'm doing this whole thing, because I just love helping people get stronger and find ways to just be better. So it's been really, really cool. I love it.
Are there any kind of like, standout moments or standout clients or standout, experiences since kind of, putting that coaching hat on where you're like, yeah, wow, that's one that, really makes me feel good about the situation?
John's been pretty cool. Like he came in here with so many pains, and I guess he had a lot of doubts in his mind with what he could and couldn't do. And honestly, he's blown my mind with what he can do. Like he entered the powerlifting comp, and he hit like a 115 deadlift and PB'd his bench, and he got 57.5, and like squatted like high 60s. His face at the end of that was like, oh my god, like he was just in. It was just in this like whirlwind of emotions afterwards. Like didn't even think he could do it, and then afterwards be like, you know what? Like I want to give weightlifting a go. And he's like early 70s. So it's really cool watching him and my other clients that have had these limiting beliefs, and then kind of pushing past them, being like, I can do so much more than what I thought I could. So I think that is really cool.
It's so funny you mentioned limiting beliefs, hey, because I think everybody, regardless of their capability or their status, walks around with these things all the time, and in so many different domains of life as well. And I think like going back to learning and teaching, which is obviously the theme of today, one of the biggest, I think, inhibitors of learning is believing ahead of time that something is or isn't possible. And I think that, people don't mean to do that. It's just something that we kind of do without knowing too much. And a lot of people don't actually stop and question, hey, is this possible or not? I had Cam come in. He's obviously been down in Perth after, scaling all of WA with his partner Em, as she kind of runs the whole coast, a marathon a day for 31 days. Absolutely crazy. Em, if you're listening, congratulations on something that is absolutely insane. But Cam was doing some squat jerks yesterday, and he failed 125, and he packed up his wrist straps after he failed, and he was like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. And I made a deal with him that if he hit 130, I'd consider letting him squat jerk. So he failed 125. 120 looked amazing, by the way, not even hard. And I was sure, knowing Cam, that he was just going to chuck that on, do it again, and then do the 130. He started packing up. He's obviously tired. It's been a long month, all very understandable things. But I said, what are you doing, Cam? Like, this is not what I expected of you. You're right here, like grasping distance from this thing, and you definitely want to do this because you're that flashy kind of guy. I know you'd love to be able to do this in a comp. What's going on? He said, I failed 125. What, you're going to tell me to do 130? I said, yeah, 100% I am. The fail was insignificant. He lost his balance for half a second, and with a squat jerk, any small minor deviation will say, goodbye, that bar's not yours anymore. But he had done 6 or 7 in a row that were perfect. And I said, you're 100% doing this. And in fact, I said, I'll tell you what, Cam, because I made a $50 bet with him that he wasn't going to be able to do the 130, because Cam loves that kind of shit. I said, I'll go double or nothing. You get 100 if you hit it, and you give me 50 if you don't. Because I don't give a shit about the bet. I just want to be able to do this thing. But he actually switched on, and then he ended up hitting the 130, which was pretty cool. But going back to limiting beliefs, it's so interesting to see that, on one side, you've got John, one of our older clients, not old, older, and John has this limiting belief and then smashes it. And on the complete other end of the spectrum, you've got Cam, who, probably is going to be a national level competitor next year. And the exact same thing is either going to stop them or not stop them from learning and growing. It's crazy how pervasive it is, but sometimes I think it doesn't hurt just to take a second or two and say, what are my limiting beliefs? What do I believe is not possible? And how can I actually sit down, create a plan, and smash that so that it doesn't get in my way?
But sometimes you need other people there as well to kind of guide you through that. Because I know I've had so many limiting beliefs, and people are just like, that's bullshit,
Oh, totally.
you know? And you're just like, oh, maybe it is bullshit. And then you push past it, you're like, oh, it was bullshit.
Yeah, you're right. It's funny. I think humans are like such social creatures, but it's also super interesting because like you look at Friday and the little game we played. I think the wind really was hit. Like you had no wind in your sails after that. Friday session didn't go so well.
Yeah.
And early on in weightlifting, it feels heartbreaking to not have a good day after
Yeah.
having many good days. But the question then is like, okay, like if our role as coaches or teachers is to facilitate learning, make that happen in the long term so that people really get the kind of change that they're looking for, how do I continue to see people through this? Like who knows, was it a limiting belief that kind of had you feeling flat? Maybe you just needed a bit of rest. It could have been any number of things, but it's funny how like you and me and Faye training together on Friday last week breaks that, and then you're like, oh, everything's fine now. Actually, there was nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely your brain. You just need to switch it off sometimes, and then everything's fine.
Crazy.
I think that's what happens. The big thing I've also learned in the last few months is don't think, just do.
Yeah, a bit of smacking goes a long way.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for your time. Very fun. We got episode 1 in the books. Hopefully you learned something. I think we at least learned a little bit about how to do this. If you enjoyed it, leave a comment, say something. It was really fun having you, and we'll look forward to next time.